Hello dear tea friends from around the world. Welcome to a new tea class with me, Stéphane Herler. I'm the founder of the Tea Masters blog and the tea-masters.com tea boutique. Today we are continuing with our classes on teacups. It's class number 3 about firing. And we saw in the two previous classes what is making porcelain, because porcelain cups are the most suitable for tea. We want to advance and see what are the properties of porcelain. We saw that porcelain has to be made of kaolin clay. Kaolin comes from the Gaolin mountain in China. That's a place where you could find a very white clay. This is the origin of this name, and also a necessary component of porcelain. But it's not enough to use kaolin clay to be porcelain. It also has to be glazed. This is what we saw in our class number 2. We need to put glaze on the surface of the clay so that it really becomes completely smooth and completely tight, watertight, and it's also much nicer to the touch, completely soft and almost like ice. And the third thing that makes something that is necessary to make porcelain is a firing above 1250 degrees Celsius. If it's below, this is going to be pottery. Pottery is usually around 900 degrees Celsius, but really to be able to be called porcelain, it has to be above, far above 1200, even 1300 degrees Celsius, depending a bit on the clay. Let's go a bit more in detail now about the firing. The firing evolved. In the past, you would fire directly your pieces in an oven in direct contact with the flames, with the fire. And of course, for most of the time in history, it was wood fire. Maybe later it became charcoal fire, but still until now you see a lot of wood fire, but mostly it's for pottery. And this gives a lot of changes in the color. When you fire with wood, because you have ashes that will fall down during the firing on the piece, and depending on where the piece is sitting in the oven, it will be closer or farther to the fire, and some places will be you can see they are closer to the fire than they are more burnt, become harder also than places that are a bit farther away, not in direct contact with the fire. So this is traditionally what happened to pottery, and later on what happened in order to protect the surface of these pieces that were fired, not to have them in direct contact with the ashes that would leave marks on the surface of your porcelain item. They created saggers. Saggers are like kind of boxes made of pottery that would protect each piece so that it's not in direct contact with fire anymore. This is how famously the Shenyang bowls, the black glazed bowls, were fired in saggers, and so the color variations really happened because of the glazing that was melting, and not due to the fire or the ashes. But how do we find out about if a piece is correctly fired, and is it fired at a high temperature or not? There is a simple test for this, and that's the reason why I did not put any music today. Is you have to make your cup ring like we ring a bell. So you see my singing cup is ringing pretty nicely. My flower cup, also very high-pitched sound. A Qinghua cup. Here is a cup made by Michel François. Also the classic cup in celadon color. Now here we have a porcelain cup from Jingde Zhen, which has a lot of decoration, but also very thick walls. Will it ring with these thick walls? Yeah, actually it does, because it was well fired. Here is one of my mini cups. You can hear it. It sounds really very high pitched. The two dragon cups, dragon and chasing a ball, and okay, actually they seem to all be sounding like this. Now, what if we have a piece that is not porcelain? Here we see at the foot of this cup, this is a Korean celadon cup, that this is not porcelain, it's pottery. So if it's pottery, it's not supposed to be fired at such a high temperature. Let's hear its sound. Very matte. It's almost like you are hitting wood. This here does not have any bell sound. Now, what about this cup from Michel François? It looks very white. Is it porcelain? Here, at the foot, we see it's a bit rough. It's a yellowish clay. So, is it part porcelain, part clay? How do we find out? Well, one way to find out is to do this, and we hear that it sounds kind of hollow, not a high-pitched noise. Therefore, this is also a pottery cup that was not fired at a high temperature. Now, this one, of course, is a bowl. Also, it sounds a bit firmer than the first cup, but still not tight enough, not ringing high-pitched enough to be very hard. Therefore, this is not porcelain. Definitely, this is a piece of pottery. Now, interesting. Zesha, because zesha is different from pottery. Zesha, as we know from the study of teapots, zesha is a clay that is fired around the same temperature as porcelain, 1200 something degrees. Now, is this going to ring or not? Let's hear. Yeah, actually, it produces a similar sound as porcelain. So this is not called pottery. It already has the, but it's not porcelain either, because it's not white, and this one is not even glazed. However, it is fired at above 1200 degrees, because it has this high pitch, but the name therefore is not pottery, it's not porcelain, it's ceramics. The question can arise for older pieces of porcelain, like this one, where we see that the clay is also maybe not as pure, because in the older times they did not have so much good equipment to refine the clay, extract all the impurities, and maybe did not have access to such a pure kaolin material. So this cup looks very much like a Qinghua porcelain cup. It's even quite fine when I look at its walls. It's a bit transparent. Let's see about the firing. It does not sound very high pitched. Therefore, this one is probably under fired. How about this Qing Dynasty Qinghua cup? Here the walls are even thinner. It's a very high quality piece of porcelain. There are some impurities in the clay that has resurfaced after the firing. We can see some black spots. These are iron that was not taken out of the clay, because in older times they did not have as good equipment as nowadays to purify the clay. How about the firing? How good is it? Oh, a very nice sound. So this one is really very well made. So it's one way, especially for older pieces, to ascertain their quality. For newer pieces, of course, nowadays with gas or even electric kilns, it's quite easy to reach the proper temperatures. But in older times, this was much more of a challenge to reach 1200 to 1300 degrees Celsius, and sometimes it would not, but sometimes it would. And one way that you can find out about it is by letting the cups ring. And by the way, you can also do the same thing when with your teapots to hear how high-pitched the sound is, and this will give you an indication of the firing temperature of your piece. Has it become really very compact, and has it transformed into this from a clay where the each piece of sand is a bit separate from the other, into porcelain, which is where the links are really so close that it helps to make the sound ring, because everything is in such a tension that you are able to get this ringing sound. So I hope that you have enjoyed this lesson about the firing. You can go back to your cups and let them sing, let them ring, to better appreciate how difficult it is to achieve this sound. You really, behind it means temperatures of over 1200 degrees. This is not something that you are able to do in a pizza oven now. Mine only goes to 250, so with a regular oven we are very far from being able to achieve such temperatures. So it's really a piece of high skill, high ingenuity. Oh, I forgot about this one. We can see it's made from porcelain clay, but it's black glazed, therefore it's not really porcelain. Was it well fired? In theory it should, because of the clay, but let's make sure. Of course, here the sound sounds crisp, sounds high-pitched, but depending on the thickness of the walls, on the shape, on the size, the sound will change a bit from one piece to another. It's really about getting a crisp, ringing bell kind of sound that indicates that the temperature of over 1200 degrees was achieved. And this is important because with this good firing of the cup, the glaze and the clay are both very tight, and don't let any aroma sink in the clay or the glaze, and everything comes back. So these cups are really very good for drinking very light aroma teas, because the lightest aromas, they will not be absorbed by the cup, they will come back to you. Cups that are under fired, like this Celadon pottery cup or these ones, they are better for teas that are so intense in flavors that you could do with some further refining, harmonizing. I'm thinking here more of Chopur or Reicha in general. These are teas that are so strong, so powerful, that if the clay and the glaze absorb some of it, thanks both to the properties of the clay, of the glaze, and because it was fired at a lower temperature, then the tea will become smoother, more rounder. Of course, it will lose some of its intensity, and therefore it's really suitable for teas that are a bit powerful to begin with. Okay, thank you very much. Next week we are going to dive into the beauty part of the cups, give you also an historic perspective on it, how to appreciate them, and then we'll start our vacation, I think, and see you again therefore next week for the last part about teacups. Thank you.